Hi guys, this is Noel from creationeffects.com. I've had several people ask me how I made this ocean flyover shot. This is the opening shot in the demo video for Ocean, which is an After Effects template from creationeffects.com. So I decided to make a quick tutorial on how I did this. I'll be using the Ocean template, which makes an animation like this really easy to make. If you've never heard of it, Ocean basically takes a video clip of some water and it turns it into a huge 3D ocean or lake, which you can then customize and create 3D camera movements and create all kinds of cool water animations that you would probably think just by looking at them would not be possible in After Effects. So I'll leave a link in the description so you can check out the Ocean template, and let's start with the tutorial. Alright, so I have the Ocean template open right now. By the way, this is not the main tutorial for the template. You can find the main tutorial at the link in the description. This tutorial I'm just going to show you how I made that shot. So you can see we've got step 1, step 2, step 3 here in your project panel. Let's just go through the steps. I'll open this up and we're going to make an HD animation, so I'll open the HD folder. And the first thing I want to do is bring my background into After Effects and put it in this comp here. So I'll go to File and Import and File. And I have this image that I got off the internet with some clouds. I'm going to use this as the background for my shot. So I'll bring that in and just drag it into this comp. And we'll scale it down. I might move it over so the sun is more in the middle. And that's fine. We can customize the positioning later. I'll close that comp, and next we want to put our water texture into this comp here. So if you look here, we've got a folder called Water Textures, and inside we have over 50 different clips of ocean water or lake water, pools, ponds, rivers. They're all divided up into their own categories. We're going to make an ocean, so I'll open this Ocean folder, and you can see if I go through, we've got a wide variety of different colors of water, different levels of turbulence. I think this is the one that I used for that opening shot. So I am going to drag that into the Put Water Texture Here comp. I'll play that back so you can see what it looks like. These water textures average about 10 seconds in length, and they all loop continuously. Let's close that comp, and we're done with this step. Next I'll go to step 2, and we can kind of rush through this one. This step just adds a wavy pattern at the top of the water clip. And if you select the control layer in this comp and then go to your effect controls panel, you've got a number of different slider controls which you can use to customize the shape of the waves. And the idea is to match the shape and the speed and the movement of this shape up here with the water in your water texture. So you can change the height of the wave, and you can increase the detail. You can make it move to the left or the right depending on where your water is moving. I don't think we even need to do this. I think that maybe add a little more complexity, and I think our water is moving to the left. Let's do -40. That'll make the shape move to the left with the water. Good enough. We'll close that, and moving on, we'll go to step 3, and again we'll open the HD folder and open up this water main comp. So here we have our 3D ocean, and you can see the color doesn't really match. The water is pink, so let's fix that really quick. I'll go back to my step 1 folder and open up that water texture comp, and let's just add some quick color correction to that. We'll do a hue saturation effect, and I'll adjust the master hue until we get more of that gold color, and that'll work. Let me just play this back so you can see what it looks like. I'll make sure that my resolution is on half or less just so it's faster. So I think that looks really cool, considering we just made that from a single 10-second clip of some water. So what exactly is going on here? Let me use the camera tool. I'll hit the C key until we get this orbit tool, and I'll just move the camera up. And I can orbit around, and you'll start to see we just have a bunch of instances of our water texture all in a row, and they're rotated at an angle. And we can extend the edges into the distance if we need to, so you can almost get a 180-degree view of your ocean. And you can animate your camera to move however you want. You can put a title over the water. You can bring the camera way up and get a high angle shot. Whatever you want to do, it's really flexible. I'm going to undo that camera movement. And I'm going to show you from the right side view. Let me zoom out. You can see all of our water texture layers here. We've got 15. We're going to need a lot more than that. Here we have our camera layer in the front. It's looking forward. You can see our background, our cloud image here. And if we want to recreate that flyover shot, what we need to do is animate this camera to move forward. And in the beginning, it's going to be tilted downward, and then it's going to slowly tilt up and reveal the horizon. And we're going to need to duplicate these water layers so that they go off really far into the distance. So let's animate our camera first. I'm going to select our camera layer and hit the P key to bring up the position property. And I'm going to just start moving my camera back. If you hold down Shift while you click and drag the value, it'll go much faster. I'm actually just going to enter in a nice round value, negative 15,000 pixels. And I'll go to my first frame and I'll add a keyframe. And I think 10 seconds is a good duration for our animation, so I'll go forward 10 seconds. And I'll bring our camera to 15,000 pixels. So it'll travel a total of 30,000 pixels. And you can see now the camera is actually facing backwards, and that's because it's always going to point at the point of interest. And I'll fix that in a second. First of all, let's duplicate our water layers. So you can see this little note says duplicate any blue layer to add water layers. I'm going to select all the blue layers. I'll select the top one and then Shift select the bottom. And I'll do Command D or Control D to duplicate them. While they're still selected, I'll bring them to the bottom. And I'm just going to do that a bunch of times. You can see I'm on layer number 100 here, and I think that'll be enough. We'll see. And we'll also need to push these back on the Z-axis as well. So we can do that using the control layer. I'm going to select my control layer, and then in the Effect Controls panel, you can see we've got a whole bunch of different slider controls for customizing our scene. And the control that we need right now is found in the Position section here. The Z position. So we're going to move that way back. I'm not sure exactly how much. If we go to the first frame, I think we're going to want it even further under the camera. We'll try that. And let me zoom out so we can see everything. And I'll go to our last keyframe. Our camera is going to be looking the other way, and we're going to want these water layers to keep going off into the distance. So on the control layer, let's see, we've got this increase Z position with distance. So the further back these go in the distance, the further apart they're going to be. And it's going to add a lot of depth and distance to these layers without having to duplicate the layers a bunch of time and make it slower. So let's start cranking that up and see what happens. And I'm not sure how far that is now, but let's go with it. And we might want to make some more adjustments to these later, but for now, let's just finish animating our camera really quick. Remember, we're going to have this camera tilt down, let's say for the first 2 seconds, and then it'll start tilting up as it keeps moving forward. So we need to bring this point of interest forward in our scene to make our camera tilt downward. So the shortcut to bring up the point of interest is A. I'm going to hit Shift A, and that'll let us keep our position property open and add this point of interest property. And I'm holding down Shift as I drag the value so that it goes faster. Something like that should work. Actually, if you remember, our camera position is negative 15,000 pixels. Let's just make this negative 13,500. So that's 1,500 pixels ahead of the camera. We'll want to remember that. Let's add a keyframe for the point of interest. And let's go forward 2 seconds. We want to keep that point of interest ahead of the camera, 1,500 pixels, to keep it tilted down the same amount for those first 2 seconds. So our camera is now at negative 9,000. Let's make it negative 7,500. And over the next, let's say, 4 seconds, it's going to tilt upward. So we're going to bring this way forward. And now would be a good time to go back to our active camera view because I'm not sure what this looks like. So let's go to active camera view. You can see our background layer got pushed way back in Z space. So it looks much smaller, and we can fix that in a minute. And also we've got some stripes on our water. We can fix that as well. But for now, let's finish animating our point of interest. I would say we should keep our horizon at about the middle of the frame. So what we can do is bring our point of interest up a little bit, and that's about right. And I'm going to round this number off just to make the math easier. Okay, so right now the point of interest is 12,000 pixels ahead of the position of the camera. And we want to keep that distance for the remainder of our animation. So I'll go to the end of our animation, and I'll enter in another value for our point of interest. It should be 12,000 pixels ahead of this. So that would be 28,000 pixels. And I think that's pretty good. If we wanted to add more water layers, we certainly could do that, and this would go even further into the distance. And before we fix how this looks, I'm going to need to make some small adjustments to our keyframes because I know this is going to look like garbage. We need to smooth out the keyframes so our camera motion isn't all jerky. And I always do that in the graph editor. Our position keyframes can remain linear. So the position will change at a constant pace, and that's what we want. But this point of interest, as the camera tilts up, we want it to ease into that motion. So what we can do is select those keyframes and right-click it. And we're not going to go to easy ease. I find 9 times out of 10 that's not what I want. We're going to go to keyframe interpolation. And in temporal interpolation, we're going to choose continuous Bezier. And now I'll click on the graph editor button here. If you're not familiar with a graph editor, I'm not going to say it's simple. It takes some practice to master it. But basically, this curve represents the speed that the value changes. If it's a flat line, that means the value isn't changing. If it's a steep slope, that means the value is changing more rapidly. Remember, for that first 2 seconds, we don't want that value to change. So I'm going to try and straighten this out. Actually, I'm going to right-click those and just change those ones to linear. Okay, and I'll bring this down here, and I can go drag this little handle to make that transition smoother. Okay, we've got a straight line for that last 4 seconds of the animation, and we'll ease out of this one and ease into this one. and that'll just smooth that movement out as the camera tilts up. And wow, I really hope that looks okay. That's not at all what I did in my practice run, but hopefully it'll work. Okay, now we can, we'll close that and we'll go to our control layer and we'll try to fix some of those things we saw earlier. If I scrub through, you can kind of get a feel for how this is going to look. All right, let's do the background first. On the control layer, the very last section of controls is called background controls. We can scale that background way up. You can see I went to the frame where I'm furthest from the background, but I can still see it. So as long as it fills our frame at this frame, it'll look okay for the rest of the animation as well. Oh, I stretched it. Okay, we want it to be the same for both X and Y. And let's go forward a little bit. And that's fine. If we wanted to bring it down, we could. And next, let's fix these stripes. As the water texture repeats itself over and over into the distance, you start to see patterns because every texture is going to have something recognizable about it. Either one side will be a little darker than the other, or there's going to be a reflection that's going to repeat itself. But it's easy to fix that. If we go to the top up here, add random exposition, we can start cranking that way up. And you can see the layers are randomly being pushed out. So I added about 2,000 pixels of random position on the x-axis, and that gets rid of all of those stripes. If we didn't like how it turned out, we can just add a number to the random seed here, and it'll give you new random position results. So you can play with that to eliminate any patterns that might appear in the water texture. Now, I don't think we're seeing the edges of any of these layers, but if you did see the edges, you could extend them using the CC Reptile effect, which you can control with these controls here. And one other thing I might check out, we have this section called Horizon Controls. The horizon, I've scrolled down to the very bottom, and that's this layer here. If I isolate that, you can see it's just one of our water texture layers. It does not extend all the way to the edge of the frame. This horizon layer is just like the other water layers, except it's even further back in the distance, and it doesn't have that wavy shape at the top. It's just straight. So it's meant to serve as your horizon, and it has this separate section of controls because you might want to position it differently than these other water layers. So you'll usually want to solo that layer and check out where it is. Sometimes it can be down here. Sometimes the edges won't go to the edge, and then you can make your adjustments to fix that in this section here. I'll just extend the edges. And one last thing I might do is just turn on motion blur. We'll turn it on for the comp, and then I'm going to select all my water layers and turn on motion blur for those layers. And I hit Command K to bring up the composition settings, and I'm going to increase the shutter angle to like 300, and that'll increase the blur. So that about does it. I hope you liked that tutorial. Be sure to go to Creation Effects and check out the other effects that are there for After Effects. There's custom flocks of birds, swarms of insects, schools of fish, custom 3D particle effects, 3D books, ink bleeds, auroras, VHS effects, old film effects, glitch effects, text effects, growing flourishes, and over 40 artifacts for converting your footage into animated artwork.